Imagine perfection. Seems blissful, doesn't it? I'm sure every one of you has their own unique version of what perfection looks like. Maybe it's on a beach somewhere with a margarita, or savoring the perfect piece of cake. The unfortunate thing is, just like tomorrow, perfection is always a day away. The breeze just blew off your little margarita umbrella, or you got a tad too much frosting on your cake. Perfection always sounds amazing in a fantasy, but reality always seems to come up at least a little bit short. Hey, this is Brett, teaching you to think critically about the world around you and cut through the evolving chaos. Throughout history, the pursuit of perfection has debatably helped more often than it has hurt. Consider the phrase, shoot for the moon, you'll hit the stars. While you may not reach the moon, you will achieve something great by aiming for the fences and not holding back. It felt good to see wars come to an end, to witness flight for the first time, or even set foot on the literal moon as a species. However, this relentless pursuit of perfection has started to weigh on society, as the improvements that were largely low-hanging fruit have already been cashed in, but people's desire for progress, or being part of the solution, have not subsided. And when society's problems are no longer obvious, or those that are don't have simple pathways to solve them, people begin to search for problems, either by focusing exclusively on what's wrong, or worse, by manufacturing problems in order to say they're on the side of the solution. But talk is somewhat hollow in many cases. What would really satisfy this need to make a difference would be real action paired with real results. Unfortunately, there has been a growing discrepancy between the shrinking ability of the average person to enact meaningful change in society compared to how shockingly easy it is to complain to the world. While everyone and their mom has a social media account and can voice their complaints to hundreds or thousands of people in a matter of seconds, making meaningful progress on those complaints falls largely to either those in government or those with the most money or highest corporate ranking. Therein lies a massive frustration. The relatively newfound ability to see the world happening all around you and be able to speak on its challenges, but the futility of knowing that you will likely not make an impact with your voice. And so you shout louder, thinking that it is volume that is the real limiter. In reality, I believe it is perspective that is the driver of this massive frustration. A false belief that the world would be better if we just changed everything today. The truth is that the world has already reached much of its potential that it is capable of right now. There's still more juice to squeeze from the lemon, but it will take a while and a lot of effort. To me, 95% is a good estimate of what we're doing right, and makes a good name for a video. The 95% rule, a way of thinking that challenges how many people, especially the most vocal, have come to view the world today. The theory is this: humans are naturally focused on progress. We always want to get better. We want society to be better. We want to make an impact on the larger world. That, I can agree, is a noble endeavor. But we've gotten to the point of obsessing over this progress. While progress is really great if things are failing all around you, it becomes a rare resource to find as life gets better around the world. Imagine a student getting a 50% on a test. They get a note from the teacher saying they have room for improvement. But it's easy to find ways to improve when you're only getting a 50%, right? But what happens if the student gets a 95% on the test? Where else do they have to go? He can shoot for a 100%, sure, but at this point, the expectations can't get much higher. And the higher they go, the more impossible of a standard there is to hit. At some point soon, the student won't even be able to improve, and the perfection expectation will be cemented. On the other hand, the struggling student who can only go up from here will hopefully get better with practice, feel the rewards of that improvement, and want to do even better, until she too will stagnate at the 95% mark. During times of struggle, progress incentives create a positive feedback loop until the point where growth expectations outpace opportunities for improvement. From then on, progress becomes a shackle. Now, imagine we're talking about reality and not a test grade. While getting 100% on a test in school is within reason, it's actually impossible to hit perfection in reality. No matter what changes we make to society, there's always going to be some flaw in the system, along with people to complain about the flaw's existence. Regardless of what the actual score some totally impartial onlooker would give humanity, I believe we're much closer to 95 in reality, while culture gives the perception that we're only at a 50, thanks to the acceleration of impossible standards and zealous fixation over any perceived flaws. You're probably asking why I think we've aced the test. For starters, we have the facts. In comparison to all of human history, our species has never scored so well on a variety of metrics: lifespan, infant mortality rates, extreme poverty rates, violence, GDP per capita, and I could go on. These all indicate that the trajectory we're on is not a bad one based on the most fundamental foundations of life. I'm not saying that this is a signal to continue the status quo or to slow down on progress, but it should be a signal that we as a species have done a lot and have clawed our way from savage life to where we are today. And we should be proud of what our species has produced and respectful of what we have to lose, because not all types of progress will be for our benefit. Sure, there are still more obvious places for improvement. I wouldn't suggest accelerating the rate at which we pollute our air or oceans, or ignore the fact that depression and anxiety worldwide are out of control. Perhaps we need to take a look at short term struggles like the recent decline in American lifespans, but it should bring everyone some solace that at least we weren't alive during the Dark Ages or the bubonic plague. So, is there a reason people can't focus on the positive? Of course there is, and it's called negativity bias. Anyone who has watched the news in the past, I don't know, 20 years has felt the effects of this bias firsthand. It's the psychological phenomenon that humans focus more on the negative aspects of their surroundings compared to the positive. When we were cavemen, stressing about an animal killing us in our sleep was probably well founded. In 2026, stressing about what some celebrity said on social media is not well founded. Evolution is fighting against us, and so are media companies who profit off catastrophic headlines that make you click by invoking this fear centered mindset. The result? A complete overload of negative information that would make any alien observing us believe that our species were on the brink of collapse every single day. Yes, it's true that we're not going extinct tomorrow. But aren't there actual bad things happening in the world right now? Again, yes. However, if that's all you consume, you're effectively tricking your brain into believing that everything is miserable, killing all hope that things will ever improve in the future, when the larger picture tells a different story. That larger picture is missing because of our next issue: zoom in. Humans can only take in so much information at a time. And in a world spilling over with information and endless people vying for your attention, it's impossible to consume it all. If it's impossible to get the bigger picture, what do? We settle for a zoomed in picture based on our lenses for viewing the world. It's typically the news for older people or social media opinions for younger audiences. They're the same thing in different packages. Both are cherry picked perspectives designed to get the most attention possible. And based on what we just discussed about negativity bias, what gets the most attention is terrible, angering, depressing news. For all we know, the world may be 95% good. But if we're zoomed in on just the 5% bad, we're liable to come to the conclusion that the world is 100% bad. If you zoom in on the stem of a strawberry, you might think that it's actually a green fruit, when a fuller perspective shows that a strawberry is almost entirely red. It's not just news and social media companies that are fanning the flames, though. We all play our part as pawns in this twisted game, and it pays to complain. We're a socially isolated generation begging for attention. Complaints get more attention. They're sometimes seen by millions of people. It's an easy payoff for little work compared to the higher cost of actually chipping away at a problem when all you might see is a gradual and more localized effect. While I think the best way to fix a problem is action and not telling someone else to do that action, our social structure increasingly favors the short term dopamine rush of knowing that your voice has been heard, as opposed to the quiet pride of a real world result. Sadly, this speaks more to a rampant loneliness epidemic than anything else, a massive deficit that is growing worse by the day. For those who actually do care deeply about an issue and not just opinions, there is some good news. If a topic matters to you, then there's likely a group of people out there right now doing something about it, even if you can't. But let's say we've gotten so fed up that we genuinely are driven to action instead of just words. Then what's the holdup? The reality of change is the holdup. The administrative work, the bill writing, the years of gridlock and red tape in Congress. Solutions cost money. They have the risk of being mismanaged, or worse, totally abused. While we don't need to slow progress, most meaningful progress does happen slowly. We just need our expectations to match this pace, instead of a pace tuned to the speed of our own instant gratification. The biggest understatement about change, though, especially big changes, is in unintended consequences that only show up long term but can be catastrophic. Of course, in this fickle attention economy, only what's trendy to talk about right now matters. Long term consequences? Not only are they harder to see and correlate, but no one seems to care. In the long run, public opinion will have shifted around to dozens of different talking points, and no one will be following the original topic and whether the solution resulted in a net good or bad. What we desperately need is a more nuanced approach that considers these consequences and makes small tweaks to account for them, not complete restructuring. But that's a different uphill battle, thanks to another logical flaw in our wiring: black and white thinking. Look at the polarization we see everywhere and the echo chambers we immerse ourselves in. We are constantly forced to think in black and white instead of taking extra information into account. In the world of social media, especially Twitter character limits, nuance is not only disincentivized, in some places it is forced out completely. Excuse me, TLDR, just give me the highlights. I don't want any of the reasoning or critical thought behind this. Why? Because I have a million other things to have opinions on, and I need my minute by minute dopamine shot now, else I get cranky. In this world, with ballooning media companies and shortening attention spans, there is only enough time and space for two sides: the side of good, which is obviously whatever side you are on, and the side of evil, which is where all the other fools reside. This shallow thinking is sadly all we have time for, whatever can be conveyed in the fewest possible words, i.e., sensationalist headlines, cherry picked sound bites, and half truths that specifically favor one opinion and never challenge it. Information is now so insanely abundant that the only way we can consume it is through this watered down version, designed only to satisfy a fix, not to keep you actually informed. Imagine if we had real context, perspectives from both sides. Heaven forbid we might one day be able to meet in the middle. The irony is that this in the middle or gray area is almost always where reality actually sits, at an equilibrium where no one fully gets their way and compromise must be had. It is the struggle of these competing forces, not one dominant narrative, that ironically results in better outcomes on average for everyone. An optimal 95% good. I believe people would feel more at peace with society if they just expected the optimal solution to be in a middle state instead of fighting tooth and nail for a polar extreme that is very unlikely to happen. The real solutions we're looking for are almost never this crazy. They're actually dangerously boring, and that's why they're so unpopular. I've seen it before, the heated, insult laden responses on Reddit getting rocketed up to the top of the thread. Meanwhile, the best, well thought out response with real nuance and compromise lies dead at the very bottom of the thread, never to be seen. Because, hello, TLDR, what if the incentives shifted away from feeling morally superior and screaming at the top of our lungs? We might use social media a little less, and maybe some people would lose a lot of money. Of course, that's what all this stems from anyway. You can never escape the money. At this point, it's a fair critique to say that I myself have just been complaining this entire video, so I should just shut up and take my own advice. Touché. But creating this video was actually my form of action to help others cut through the BS using a well-reasoned argument. And I believe leading by example with nuance does everyone some good instead of piling on the stress. But yeah, let's transition to more of the positive. Here's what you can do to navigate the mess and become better for it. Even when things seem like they're spinning out of control, you can still control how you feel and act. Your whole being doesn't have to revolve around a plethora of opinions. Instead, pick something specific and focus deeply on that. With enough focused effort, you are much more likely to make a real difference than you ever would have if you split your attention over a million things that limited you to surface level complaining about each of them. Next, you don't need to think about the perfect. Come to an earnest assessment about where you are and where you're going. Maybe you resonate with 95% and can learn to appreciate it more and focus less on what you're missing. Maybe shoot for a 96% instead of going all or nothing for that 100. Focus on the internal first and then widen that perspective to larger society. If life isn't going so well, still factor in the things that are beneficial and separate your life into keepers and throwaways. A 50% still means you have half of your life to hang on to, and then you can be more deliberate about changing the other half. Most importantly, recognize when you're stepping into dangerous territory with the aforementioned logical fallacies popping up in all aspects of life, such as negativity bias or black and white thinking. Sometimes gently pointing it out can steer the conversation back on track. Sometimes it won't. But you can always prevent yourself from falling victim to the gravitational pull of others' emotions. Take a step back, take a deep breath, and tune your brain to thinking in nuance as opposed to insults, talking points, and the win at all costs mindset. For starters, I'll dive deeper into one fallacy in particular in the next video: black and white thinking. If you are serious about thinking more critically and focusing on what is really best for your brain, click the video above. You won't regret it. As always, take care, everybody.